In a dramatic 5-4 ruling, the Supreme Court has upheld the constitutionality of the individual mandate and large portions of the Affordable Care Act. Joining me from Washington, D.C. with analysis of the decision is Tevi Troy, former Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services under George W. Bush and fellow at the Hudson Institute. Tevi, thanks for being here. Now, quickly, what's your reaction to the ruling today?
Well, I think there was a bit of a constitutional rebuke in there in saying that the individual mandate is not okay under the Commerce Clause. The Commerce Clause can't mean whatever you want. At the same time, from a policy perspective, the law is upheld, and so the law will remain in place unless it is repealed. Now, obviously, that's what Republicans want to do, and I think from a political standpoint, this gives Republicans a rallying cry for the November election. So I think the Democrats might be celebrating a little bit today, but I don't think long-term they'll be quite as happy.
Well, as you said, Chief Justice Roberts, reading the opinion, doesn't fall under the Commerce Clause, doesn't fall under the Necessary Proper Clause, but they did approve the mandate as a tax. What does this mean for consumers out there?
Well, I mean, that means the mandate remains in effect all of the regulations that go with it. And many of these regulations are going to increase the cost of premiums, increase the cost of health care. And so we're already seeing a 6% hike or 6 in 10 Americans have already seen a hike in their premiums since the law was passed. There's also the danger of a lot of employers dropping health coverage going forward. One study suggests that a third of employers are going to be dropping coverage if this law gets fully implemented. So I think bad news for consumers overall. I think they're going to be suffering the brunt of this.
Now, you alluded to this, Mitt Romney raised over $300,000 in the first hour after this decision. And, in the lead up to the whole passage of this bill, President Obama touted that this was not a tax. I mean, how do you think this is going to play out in the next few months? The ruling, the fact that this is now a tax, do you think that's a liability for Obama now?
I don't think the tax issue itself, it's a slightly complicated point that it's mandate not under the Commerce Clause, but it is a tax. I don't think that's really going to play that huge a role. But I think the fact that there is effectively a mandate, that the law remains in effect, that the law is going to have these negative economic consequences, that it's not going to bend the cost curve down, that it's going to cost more for individuals, that employers will drop coverage. It's not going to cover everybody. And then you've got these unelected bureaucracies like the IPAB making decisions about what health care you can get. I think those are the unpopular features, and I think those are going to hurt the law going forward.
Now, another part of the decision was with regard to Medicaid expansion, and the court did find fault with that. Can you talk a little bit about what the court ruled in terms of Medicaid?
Yeah, sure. The court wanted to have a narrow reading of the Medicaid expansion, which means that the federal government can't hold funding issues over the states' heads in terms of how to determine their Medicaid programs. So as states look to make changes in their Medicaid programs, the federal government will have less of a cudgel in terms of shaping what their Medicaid programs look like. That's a good thing because under federal regulations and federal mandates, the Medicaid programs are really straining. The states are straining to meet those state budgets. Medicaid is a huge coster in all of the states, and I think long-term unsustainable. So I think that this constitutional rebuke on the Medicaid front will help states tailor their Medicaid programs so that they're more affordable down the road.
Now, Tevi, we've kind of heard from Republicans now that, heading into 2012 elections, that they need to repeal and replace. What, in your opinion, should be kept here, or what should health reform, if it is repealed, what should be included to replace it?
Yeah, I think the whole thing needs to go. I think it was based on flawed premises, and I think we're better off just repealing the entire thing. In terms of replace, I think there are a number of principles that we need to operate under. One is the use of markets and allow market principles to operate. 2 is individual flexibility. 3 is state flexibility. Let the states experiment and come up with the plans that work best for them. And then 4 is safeguards for those who need them. And Governor Romney is talking about all 4 of those things in his replace strategy. Again, he's been very clear. Regardless of what the Supreme Court does, he's for repeal and he's for replace.
And he certainly made that clear this morning. And Tevi, thanks so much for joining us today and giving us your analysis. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And you can read more of Tevi's work over at HUDSON.org. For PJTV, I'm Alexis Garcia. Thanks for watching.